الآن مع جلسة الحوار الثالثة بعنوان تبني المعايير الدولية الاستعداد للتحول. وسوف يدير الجلسة الثالثة الدكتور نيجل جونسون رئيس كلية التقارير المالية لمعهد المحاسبين القانونيين في إنجلترا وويلز، فليتفضل مشكورا. يتشرف بالتحدث كل من هانز هوغر فورست رئيس مجلس معايير المحاسبة الدولية، الدكتور عبد الرحمن إبراهيم الحميد عضو مجلس أمناء مؤسسة المعايير الدولية، خالد القرني نائب الرئيس للمالية لشركة سابك، جيفن ستيل شريك أسواق رأس المال والخدمات الاستشارية في برايس ووتر هاوس.
Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to be here today at this splendid conference and to have the opportunity to lead a discussion on a subject of profound economic significance, IFRS financial reporting. I'm Nigel Slade-Johnson. A few details about me on the slide there. I lead on financial reporting policy and resources at ICAW, and I head up its financial reporting faculty, an online community of professionals open to all with around 5,000 paid-up members from around the world. In a few moments' time, I will introduce our panel in a little more detail for today's discussion. And just before I do that, I'm going to say a few introductory words and share with you the main conclusions of two studies ICAW published in 2015 on the EU experience of IFRS. ICAW has been an advocate of international accounting standards from as far back as the 1970s. In 1973, the historic first meeting of the IASB's predecessor, the IASC, was held at our hall in London. A little more recently, in 2007, it was to ICAW that the European Commission turned to undertake a comprehensive study of the adoption of IFRS across the European Union. And we continue to be very closely involved in debates about IFRS and wider corporate reporting. A key way we seek to influence the international debate is through a programme of thought leadership reports. In our 2012 report on the future of IFRS, we looked at the main barriers to the spread of international standards and how to overcome them. In 2014, we published a very detailed analysis of the academic research evidence on the economic impact of the use of IFRS in Europe, which we updated and extended in 2015. And also in 2015, we published a summary of lessons learned in the EU from the use of IFRS, aimed at countries outside Europe thinking about switching to IFRS or in the early stages of transition. And it's that lessons learned report we're going to have a quick look at today. You have a copy in your packs. A little scene setting first. IFRS were adopted in Europe by means of a regulation in 2002 and became mandatory from 2005 for the group accounts of listed companies. Our 2007 study for the European Commission concluded that the transition had been challenging but successful. In mid-2015, the Commission produced a further study of the first 10 years of IFRS use, and it was as a contribution to that evaluation process that ICAW produced its two reports on the EU experience. The backdrop to all of this was, of course, the growth in IFRS application around the world. Since 2005, there has been a truly remarkable transformation in the financial reporting landscape, with many dozens of national gaps replaced by IFRS, and IFRS increasingly important even in jurisdictions where US GAAP remains the leading accounting framework. ICAW works with many national accounting institutes seeking to improve the readiness of their members for IFRS reporting. One way we do this is to make our online IFRS resources available to partner institutes as part of a wider technical product we call International Accounting, Auditing and Ethics. I'm pleased to say that SOCPA is one of those partner organisations. The resources available and the web address for more information are shown there on the slide. Okay, let's now take a quick look at those lessons learned from Europe's experience. This is just a very brief overview. There's more detail in the report, and there are other related resources, including video interviews, on our website. So, lessons learned on the benefits and costs of IFRS adoption, on which companies should be required to use IFRS, on local adaptations of IFRS, on complexity, and on national standard setters, national enforcement activity, and legal endorsement of IFRS at a national level. The first lesson is the most significant. Put simply, the longer-term economic benefits of switching to IFRS outweigh the costs and implementation challenges. Now, this conclusion is based on our rigorous review of all the relevant academic evidence on this topic, some 200 pieces of published research. There are some important caveats, health warnings, attached to our positive findings. Firstly, the research shows that the benefits were distributed unevenly among different companies and amongst different countries. And secondly, it's difficult to be sure just how far the benefits found are attributable directly to the change in standards and to what extent they relate to other related changes taking place at the same time, for example, in terms of enhanced enforcement activity. But overall, it's clear, after just 10 years, that the adoption of IFRS can convey significant net economic benefits across a range of key economic phenomena, including transparency, comparability, market liquidity, and international capital flows. Lesson 2 relates to the scope of IFRS reporting. The EU mandated IFRS in 2005 only for the group accounts of listed companies, some 7,000 of them. All companies were given the option to use IFRS rather than national GAAP, but few took up this option. In the UK, 10 years of debate followed over the extent to which the scope of IFRS reporting should be extended. The outcome was the conclusion that the full suite of IFRS is suitable for all listed companies, but not for companies that do not raise funds on the capital markets. A differential reporting regime seems best, rooted firmly in cost-benefit considerations, but based on international principles. Lesson 3 deals with local amendments to the ISB standards, which can seem an attractive option with little cost attached. We argue that they reduce significantly the benefits of moving to IFRS. Most investors simply do not have the time or the resources to study local variations. They want to be confident that the IFRS brand has been applied in full, subject only to local legal or cultural differences where absolutely necessary. Europe has in fact made very few changes to IFRS as issued by the ISB and has generally resisted the temptation to issue authoritative guidance and interpretations, emphasising instead the need for professional judgment. If each country issues its own guidelines and rules, international comparability and investor confidence would become progressively weaker. Of course, we should not expect that even a single set of global standards will mean complete uniformity across the planet. Differences in implementation will arise from differences in the local institutional infrastructure, in corporate governance, auditing, and regulatory regimes. Even a global language will encompass dialects and accents. But we can expect the significance of the differences in a financial reporting context to decline over time as regulatory and market forces tend to push further towards globalization. The message from lesson 4 is that complexity is sometimes unavoidable. EU-listed companies have seen the length and complexity of their financial statements grow relentlessly, and the blame for this is often laid at the door of IFRS. This is certainly a problem. Complexity in financial reporting, however, has more than one cause. Transactions have become ever more complex in recent decades, especially in relation to financial instruments, and it would surely not be helpful to users for that complexity to be ignored in the financial statements. So the IASB needs to strive to minimise complexity in its standards and to eliminate unnecessary disclosure, but the degree of complexity in IFRS reporting may not be as unreasonable as some suggest. And so to lesson 5, as the use of IFRS has spread, questions have been asked about the role of national standard setters. 10 years ago, some were suggesting that national standard setters would not be needed in Europe in an era of global standards. The reality is that they continue to play a number of vitally important roles. For example, undertaking research, encouraging stakeholder input into the IASB's due process, and developing local standards for private companies or not-for-profit entities. The need for strong and well-resourced national standard setters is perhaps greater today than ever before, and not weaker. The importance of the national alongside the international is also the theme of lesson 6. EU experience shows that robust and unbiased enforcement is an essential companion of good accounting standards, and that the enforcement regime should be based on the operation of effective national enforcement bodies. National bodies understand the specific requirements of the national regulatory framework and are best placed to tailor their enforcement approach accordingly. At the same time, European experience has shown that national regulators need to work very closely, not only with the IFRS Foundation, but with one another. Only by routinely exchanging information and sharing experience can they start to ensure that enforcement of these principles-based standards is consistent in their region and around the world. Finally, lesson 7, the importance of local endorsement arrangements. The EU endorsement process involves member state representatives and the European Parliament and has proved an effective way of establishing the political legitimacy of IFRS. It has, moreover, resulted in very few decisions not to endorse any new IASB standard or change in IASB standards. The main drawback has been the fact that the process for reaching endorsement decisions is rather complex and protracted. So while the approach to endorsement will vary around the world, it will always be important to establish clearly defined and manageable timetables. This will necessitate early engagement with local stakeholders, especially investors, and close involvement throughout with the IASB's standard setting process by the body responsible for endorsement. Ladies and gentlemen, in the interest of time, I'm not going to take any questions now, but I'm happy to take any during the panel session, and you're welcome to contact the faculty after the event. In the meantime, we'll move to our panel discussion. And I'm delighted to introduce you to an excellent group of contributors for this session on gearing up for transition in IFRS to IFRS. Hans Hugeforst is chairman of the International Accounting Standards Board, as most of you will know. He's a former chairman of the Netherlands Securities Regulator and a former chairman of IOSCO's Technical Committee. Between 1998 and 2007, Hans held a number of positions in the Dutch government. Before that, amongst other things, he also spent 3 years as a banking officer for the National Bank of Washington in Washington, D.C. Dr. Abdul Rahman Al-Hamid is a trustee of the IFRS Foundation. He has for more than 30 years held leadership roles within various accounting and financial services bodies, both within Saudi Arabia and in the broader Middle East region. He chairs SOCPA's Committee for Adopting International Accounting Standards and served as chairman of SOCPA's Accounting Standards Committee from 1996 to 2002. He worked as a professor of accounting at King Saud University from 1982 to 2008. Gavin Steele at the end there is a member of ICAW and a partner in PwC's Capital Markets and Accounting Advisory Services team in the Middle East. He has advised clients on the application of IFRS since moving to the region some 20 years ago. And he also leads PwC's technical accounting function in the Middle East region. And last but not least, we're delighted to have with us Khalid Al-Ghani. He is Vice President for Finance at SABIC, the Saudi Basic Industries Corporation. He also holds other senior managerial positions and was Global Audit Partner at Deloitte & Touche. That's our splendid panel. I hope I've summarised your biographies and pronounced your names reasonably well. In a moment, I'll ask the panel members for their views on a number of issues around the continued transition of Saudi Arabia to IFRS. And there will also be, as usual, an opportunity for you to address your own questions or observations to the panel towards the end of this session. So please bear that in mind during the panel discussion and think of points you'd like to make a little later on to me or to our panel members before we wrap up for the lunch break. And just before we get underway, we're going to watch a very short IFRS Foundation video to help set the scene for the discussions that will follow. So could we see the video, please?
Financial information is the lifeblood of capital markets. Every day, more and more of the world's capital transactions are cross-border investments. But how does an investor here decide whether to invest here or here or here? International investors need access to financial information they can trust. International financial reporting standards provide the global language of financial reporting. Now, well over 100 countries require companies to use IFRS standards when reporting on their financial performance. Investors around the world trust IFRS standards because they bring three key benefits to the world economy. IFRS standards bring transparency by providing high quality and comparable information. This helps investors to make more informed investment decisions. IFRS standards improve accountability by helping to reduce the information gap between those on the inside of a company and those on the outside. This helps investors and others to hold company management to account. And IFRS standards help companies and markets to operate more efficiently by having a single trusted global standard for financial information. It lowers the cost of capital and reduces the costs of reporting. Together, this contributes to the global economy by fostering trust, growth, and long-term financial stability. Find out more about IFRS here.
Let's start with a few thoughts, perhaps from you, Hans, about the state of play regarding IFRS adoption around the world, about the global community that Saudi Arabia is now a part of.
Well, yes, the spread of IFRS is truly one of the most astonishing stories of globalization that the world has seen. If you imagine that 15 years ago, nobody in the world was using IFRS. And now it's 115 countries around the world that use IFRS, lock, stock, and barrel. If you look around the world, all of Latin America, Canada up north, the United States is one of the last holdouts. They don't apply IFRS yet. They have decided for the time being it's going to be US GAAP first. But IFRS is second in the United States. Foreign investors, foreign listers can use IFRS when they want to issue shares on the New York Stock Exchange. So that means if Aramco, for example, wants to issue stocks in the United States, they will be able to use IFRS. All of Europe, including non-EU countries, all of the more developed countries in Africa, and in Asia, IFRS is still growing. Countries like Malaysia, Singapore, South Korea, Hong Kong have already used IFRS for quite a long time. Japan is, in Japan, the use of IFRS is increasing very fast. About 30% of all companies now use IFRS. And both China and India have made tremendous progress towards full convergence with IFRS. They're not quite there yet, but a lot of progress has been made. So all in all, it's quite an amazing story.
Let me ask the other members of the panel, just how important do you rank this decision to move to IFRS reporting in terms of the economic development and the economic diversity of Saudi Arabia?
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. طبعا أتكلم بالعربي. أول شيء بس ودي أقول كلمة في صدري، وأنا مرشح شوي، صوتي مو بعالي والعادة صوتي عالي. والله فرحت فرح عظيم جدا، وأنا عرس وأنا جاي أشوف هالشباب كلهم يقودون، الشباب اللي أفنيت 30 سنة من عمري، بعضهم تعلم بعضهم، فعلا الواحد يشوفهم يفرح يثلج صدره حقيقة. يكون الواحد مرتاح بأن الواحد أدى الأمانة ويشوف هالشباب القياديين سواء من الشابات والشباب، وهذا فرح عظيم. بالنسبة لي قصة الIFRS والمملكة، حقيقة هي بدأت من عندما اختيرت المملكة تكون في الجي 20. فعند اجتماع الجي 20 كان هناك تقريبا أحد القرارات أن لابد أن يكون financial reporting تكون للجي 20 على الأقل، تكون موحدة وقريبة من بعض. وانطلقت من هناك، وبدون أدنى شك الإفرت اللي عمل في المملكة خلال 20 سنة قبل الانضمام إلى IFRS كان إفرت عظيم جدا. للرجال أخلصوا وأنتجوا، وبنيت البنية التحتية الأساسية للقبول بالمعايير. يعني المشكلة هي ليست المعايير لكن تطبيق المعايير، رفع مستوى الترانسبيرنسي، رفع مستوى الشفافية، الحوكمة، عملية. وإلا إذا رجعنا إلى فلسفة المحاسبة نجد أنها مجرد عملية measurement and communication. نختلف في بعض الآراء وسنختلف مستقبلا. دول العالم كلها تختلف في عملية القياس وعملية communication. But at the same time is building the standard هي اللي تساعد حقيقة مو بس building the standard لكن تطبيق standard مهم جدا. لا يمكن تطبيق standard من خلال حوكمة قوية جدا. وأعتقد أنه we are moving it في المملكة الوقت الحاضر أكثر مما كان ماضيا. الشيء المهم بس ودي أقوله أن انضمام المملكة أنها تكون في الترستي كان لها يعني، وأنا لي 5 سنوات في الترستي، كان حقيقة أصبحت المملكة من صناع. كنا نتلقى بس في العالم نتلقى المعايير، أصبحنا الآن من صناع، لنا تأثير في اختيار البورد حق المعايير، الآن لنا تأثير في التأثير على. وأعطيكم مثالين يعني واضحين جدا. أصبح الآن البورد مهتم جدا بشيئين نختص بهم اللي هم Islamic Financial Instruments، هذه الآن جديين إن شاء الله أن يكون IFRS 9 أيضا داخل فيها. أيضا الكوربريت انشورنس المشهور تأمين، ومعيار تأمين بيطلع قريبا عليه ديبيت كثير، ولكن أيضا هالموضوعين هذه مهمين جدا. أصبحوا شبابنا الآن أبشركم في كثيرا من يشاركون في كثيرا من المؤتمرات وكثيرا من أيضا اللجان اللي تابعة لIFRS. فأكد لكم أن المملكة الآن أصبحت صانع في الIFRS، وليس بس مستقبل، وهذا مهم جدا. الشيء الثاني المهم لا ننسى طبعا أن هناك معايير سعودية، معايير سعودية بذل عليها جهد كبير جدا وبنيت، والمشكورين اللي بنوها على مر الأوقات. ما زالت المعايير السعودية إلى 2016 هي المفترض تطبق. من 2017 نبدأ في adapting الفارس الكوارتر هذا وتجربة. بس أقول لكم شيء نوعا من المفارقة. أنا مريت على مراحل كأستاذ جامعة، كريجوليتور، إعداد المعايير، وبعدين مريت في أني أصير في ريجوليتور فايفس. الآن أنا في الكورنر في الزاوية لأني أرأس مجلس إدارة بنك، وصرت أنا الآن preparer of the financial statement. فالزوايا الأربعة هي مؤثرة بدون شك، بأن عشان في نهاية الأمر أن نجلب الاستثمارات لابد أن نكون واقعيين. بس في نفس الوقت أن لا نستجلب كل الIFRS راح تكون مترجمة بالعربي. على كل من الفخر الزايد بأن أصبحت المملكة الآن السنتر لترجمة المعايير. الأوفيشال انترناشونال ستاندرد بالعربي هي اللي موجودة على السايت حقت، وفيه إفرت قوي جدا واتفاقيات مع الIFRS. الترجمة هي الترجمة الرسمية، وهذا أقول لكم كل أمانة تبرع من الجمعية من الهيئة السعودية للمحاسبين والقانونيين. لا تتلقى أموال ولا عملية تجارية، الآن موجودة لكل العالم. كل اللي يتكلمون باللغة العربية موجودة الآن، كل الIFRS على السايت حق الهيئة، وهذا طبعا في فخر. عشان نماشي نظرة 2030 أعتقد أن أيضا معايير دولية نأخذها في استثناءات. كل دول العالم فيها استثناءات، نتمنى يوم من الأيام ما يكون في استثناءات، بس الآن في استثناءات لأن التطبيق يعني خطوة خطوة، الادابتيشن خطوة خطوة. في بعض الاستثناءات اللي موجودة في الملاحق اللي لن تصدر، قد يكون أحد يعطل بعض الأشياء، تضاف بعض الأشياء البسيطة، لكن كلها عملية بسيطة جدا. يوم من الأيام لن نجد هذا. شكرا جزيلا.
Thank you very much for that comprehensive answer. I think we'll move on to another question, perhaps for Khaled. Many listed companies will, I think, be preparing and publishing their first quarter's accounts using the new standards very soon. How ready do you think they are? How ready is SABIC for this process?
Assalamu alaikum. From listed companies' perspective, I think the SOCBA had announced in 2012, since a long time, about the preparation and making those listed companies ready for the convergence to the IFRS. Some of these companies, they took the initiatives and they started to do the preparation steps and identify what's needed and what's going forward. Maybe I can talk about SABIC and maybe I can then touch base on other maybe listed companies in general. But for SABIC, in the second half of 2013, we started identifying all the requirements for the IFRSs, and we put our roadmap, and we had our diagnostic phases. Then after, in 2015, in March, we had completed the second phase of the impact assessment phase. Then we started the implementation after that date. So there was also some enforcement from the regulator for the listed company, the CMA, by asking and requesting all of these listed companies for their convergence phases, and they've obligated those listed entities to come up with their phases in 3 phases. And I think There are quite a number of listed companies that have been announced, and most of the announcements were positive announcements, and that give really as an accountant, and my background is accounting, the principles is almost the same. If we're comparing the IFRSs, the US GAAP, and SOCBA, the difference is where if there is no applicable standard that can play a role or can be adopted in here in Saudi Arabia. So a lot of efforts being taken. We take it very seriously. It was a journey. I think we are on the tail end now. We are preparing our financial statements for the all comparable periods. We are now having our opening balances. Hopefully now we're going to do also the first quarter of 2017, which is the official publication of our financial statements in accordance with the IFRSs. It's a big challenge, but we created a lot of opportunities really by having this journey. We built good pipelines throughout the project phases, having the right people working on this project, female and male, and also with the right consultants, and from the accounting side and from the system side. So, alhamdulillah, thanks to God that we are having now a compliance system. The journey is not finished. We have another journey, which is the post-go live of the IFRSs, where everybody on the project or the project will be dismantled. Now the reality will come, so we are focusing on putting extensive training for our finance managers and the affiliates, I mean the subsidiaries, and definitely customized to SABIC businesses. From another hand, also we are not forgetting that there is a change mindset, huge change mindset in this project and the convergence self. And the beauty of that SABIC had fantastic experiences with the change management and how we can roll out these changes, and from the SABIC board to the CEO and the ExCom and all the layers cascaded to all the affiliates. So it was a tremendous effort. I think the IFRS will change many ways of looking to not only to how you deal in day-to-day businesses, but from an accounting and finance side, but also there will be more interactions and interdependencies to take certain decisions for certain transaction and deals. Before, maybe finance will work like unilaterally from the legal side and from like maybe seeing it from other industry, from the same industry from other side. So now I think involvement of also legal is very important. We had also now the new corporate governance, and that's make it also very serious, looking into the roles and responsibilities for the board committee, and also from the regulations for companies, the new regulations for companies that's also set certain mandates which really in line of all these changes that we are going with. So it's really excited for me as a background of an accountant, and it's a big challenge for us, and I think this is not the end. We are going to have more challenges. Being an global economic, we used to also receive some investors from outside. Some of them are sophisticated investors and normal investors, and you will be surprised of the questions that we are receiving towards these type of changes, inclusive the IFRSs. So hopefully that the other listed companies also going in the right direction. And in SABIC, especially in our industry, in the petrochemical, we are always open to help and share our experiences towards, one goal, which is that we make a very healthy capital market, transparent, comparable, and right allocation of capital.
Want me to give a view on it? Yeah, I mean, I obviously work with a number of listed companies, and I would say most of them are now in the situation where SABIC is, getting very close to announcing results. I think one of the things they really need to bear in mind is this is just the start. That we're going through a lot of pressure at the moment to get all of these companies ready. And internally, they're changing processes, they're upskilling people, training people, etc. But this is just the start of an ongoing change that all of these companies, and in the following year, the private companies are also going to have to get ready for. IFRS changes, we're going to see virtually as soon as we get through the adoption of IFRS in 2017, we're going to go straight into revenue recognition changes, leases changes the following year, and that is all part and parcel of being part of that IFRS community and IFRS reporting. And that really means an investment in people, not only within the people that are employed in the finance functions, but right through all the education systems, getting them all ready so that they can actually come in, work, and report under IFRS. So there's a lot of background stuff that also needs to be fully aligned to what the companies are actually facing on a day-to-day basis when they're adopting IFRS. So I see this as just the thin end of the wedge. There's a lot more to be done over the next few years. And I think, going back to one of the very first questions you said, I think we're going to see the private companies coming in, adopting IFRS next year, 2018. The benefits to Saudi, it's been mentioned in the press yesterday, picked up on Hans's reports last night. It fits in with 2030. We see it as, it'll improve the liquidity in the markets. It'll bring in investors. It'll drive that listing opportunity. Those companies, those private companies that are currently reporting on the SOCPA, they're going to have IFRS numbers. They're going to have those numbers in 2018. We see that generating activity in the market in the subsequent years. So I think there's a very exciting opportunity in Saudi Arabia in the next 4 or 5 years as this all gets bedded down and becomes part of life.
You touched on this, Gavin, I think, but moving to IFRS involves much more than purely the technical accounting issues. What business and commercial implications, risks and opportunities does the panel think companies should be considering now? Khaled, would you like, or Abdulrahman?
Yeah, maybe I touch base on the change in mindset. Okay, change in mindset is also change in how to do our businesses. And I believe so that there are a number of even IFRSs that we are going to adopt. That's really changed the way how we are maintaining our certain assets, figures in the balance sheets or whatever, liabilities. So we need to be ready from cost efficiencies and plus from cost benefit also analysis. Now we are hearing about also IFRS 16, the IFRS 16 that would really has a lot of compliance costs, really. So are we going to go and change all of our contracts? Are there any exemptions or exceptions of these type of contracts which has termed more than 1 year? How we're going to deal with these? And that also is not, again, will be like taken unilaterally from finance side. That's I think, a common business view. How we're going to see our business growing and having, you know, one way of dealing with these type of transaction and maintain it for consistent purposes. Maybe if you tell me more about this dimension you're talking about. So you talk about certain commercial things and?
Yeah, I had in mind some of the sort of practical business implications of reporting under a different framework, things like debt covenants or management compensation schemes, those sorts of
yes,
practical implications.
and that's another one. Now, again, if also commercially, so as I said, that there will be more compliance costs. Now, we never had this actuarial services. Now it's mandated because you need to have a third party to do this work, and also the level of information that they need to have the right platform to generate and extract the right information, credible. And definitely there are more also to come for certain specialized, let's say, accounting treatment that maybe either you need to acquire certain talent or you may need always to have, I'm talking about SABIC. SABIC is a very sophisticated organization. Our footprint is all over the globe. So we need to make sure that we are having the right capabilities to run and maintain any new standards and maintain our costs in an efficient way. Otherwise, it will impact us commercially.
هناك بعض الانطباع اللي كثير من الناس اعتقد انها عصا سحرية، بس ما هي عصا سحرية. العملية البسيطة جدا، إذا ما في compliance، إذا المسوقين البزنس بيبل غلبوا والكومبلاينس بيبل خربت الدنيا كلها. لازم يكون في بزنس سايد ولازم يكون في كومبلاينس سايد. أتكلم عن كومبلاينس سايد من جميع الاسبكت، وأتكلم عن البزنس سايد of the aspect. أنا أعاني فيها في البنك. البزنس سايد they want to push the business، والكنترول سايد يقول لا وقف شوي، there is regulation you have to do. فهي العملية عملية تطبيق، ما هي مسألة معايير. لو نحط أحسن معايير عشان مدد الكهرباء هنا ويجي واحد كهربائي تعبان ما صلحت. هي العملية عملية متكاملة، كلها متكاملة. لكن الحمد لله في المملكة شيء جيد، أقولها بكل أمان، كان انفراستراكشر موجود، يعني الهيئة كانت موجودة، كومبلاينس كان موجود، الرقابة على المحاسبين موجود. ما ألوم أنا، وأنا من اللي أقول لكم من الآن، وسألوم البيج فور إلى بكرة، لأنه ما بنوا انفراستراكشر. شباب السعوديات شو هم اللي تقول البنت اللي كانت تتكلم من شوي، هذا سببها البيج فور، لأنهم بس يبون ضروري جدا، وهم القياديين للمحاسبة في هالمملكة من 30 سنة. ضروري جدا أن فرصتنا لا فرص جتنا الآن، فرصة عظيمة جدا أن الشباب السعوديين يدخلون بكثافة في مهنة، في فرص رهيبة جدا، في البريبير اوف فاينانشال ستيتمنت رهيبة جدا. أنا والله أأسف إن بنت كانت من شوي بنت سعودية واقفة تقول إني ل3 سنوات لم أستطع أن أحصل على فرصة عمل، وأنا أشوف آلاف اللي في المكاتب المحاسبة ومئاتهم أقابلهم كل يوم ويقولون لا عندهم خبرة. والله العظيم نصهم أشوفهم توهم خارجين من جامعات. ما أدري وش السر. السر يقع على هيئة المحاسبين القانونيين، enforcement ضروري. هذا اللي بنكسبه من الفرص. شكرا.
Thank you for those comments. Hans, your previous, in previous life you were a regulator. Effective unbiased enforcement by market regulators is a key aspect of any successful financial reporting regime, but especially where the accounting framework is based on principles, which means that the application of judgment can mean very similar fact patterns can give rise to different accounting solutions. So this is a problem we've had to struggle with sometimes in Europe. Would you have anything to add about how to deal with diversity in accounting judgments?
Yes, I think that when a lot of students, when they start studying accounting, they probably think it's primarily about crunching numbers. And I am good at crunching numbers, so I will be a good accountant. Now, given the fact that algebra is an Arabic word, I am sure that number crunching is no problem in this region. But indeed, accounting involves a lot of judgment. There's a lot of imprecision in accounting. Even simple historical cost accounting involves a lot of judgment. How to depreciate an asset, it's an estimate for the future. How to impair an asset, it's an estimate of future cash flows. All these questions are questions of judgment. And when you go to the more sophisticated accounting, financial instruments, it becomes even worse. So, first of all, in the education of accounting students, they really have to understand from the very beginning, this is much more than just number crunching. This is all about understanding economics. And economics is based on principles. And yes, our standards are based on principles. By the way, our standards are now encompass 1,350 pages, densely printed. So that's not just principles. There's a lot of guidance there and a lot of detail because of the complexity of the economy. Unfortunately, that is needed. Then, yes, in my former life, I was a regulator, and we supervised the accounting profession. And we also supervised financial reporting. And when you're in that role, you can really see that most companies deal with similar issues, and you can see in their financial reporting that sometimes they do it in a different manner. So from that central position, you can really see those differences, identify them, and deal with them. You can ask companies, well, listen, I think other companies are doing it better than you do, so you have to change your methods in the future. In Europe, this happens on a European scale. In Europe, supervision of accounting, of financial reporting is still done on a national level, but there is a European organization where all these national regulators come together and compare notes. And by comparing notes, they can also see differences, address them, and give guidance to the market how to do it. So I think what you said in your introduction, that over time probably local accents will fade away, I think that is probably going to be the case.
Let's very quickly take one more question for the panel before I ask you, the audience. Let me just ask, perhaps Gavin, whether you think Saudi has a sufficiently loud voice internationally about the future development of standards and standard-setting priorities. In Europe, major companies often respond formally to ISB proposals and they engage closely with the standard setter. Do major companies here perhaps need to do more to make their voice heard as new standards are developed and so on?
Well, I think as part of the G20, you've automatically got a voice as part of this, as being Saudi Arabia. Do you use it? No. I don't think historically companies here have been as actively as engaged as they maybe could have been. I had a situation a couple of years ago discussing the requirements of IFRS 9 with the banks, and one of the senior CFOs in the group basically said, why are they doing this in Saudi? We can't apply it, we don't have the information. And there was somebody there from the ISB at the time basically saying, well, did you raise that as a comment letter? No. Was the response, well, how do you expect us to react and to work with you if you don't actually raise these in that forum? Because there are forums for them to do that. And I think that is something that the companies here are going to have to look at, in terms of gearing themselves up bringing in the expertise that not only are looking after the numbers internally, but are working with and looking at what the IASB is doing, and raising the voice for Saudi, and raising the voice for their own particular companies and industries, and making it heard. Because I don't think they do that at the moment within the entities. But
let's pause there and take a couple of questions from the audience. So please raise your hand, wait for the microphone to reach you, and let us know who you are and your organisation if you don't mind sharing that information. So one there.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. دكتور فالح العازمي، نائب رئيس هيئة المحاسبة المراجعة الخليجية، ممثلا عن جمعية المحاسبين والمراجعين الكويتية. يقال أن النموذج المحاسبي الحالي عاجز عن مواكبة المتغيرات المستحدثة في بيئة الأعمال الحديثة في ظل الاقتصاد الجديد فيما يتعلق برأس المال الفكري، وهذا أدى بدوره إلى قصور بالتقارير المالية الحالية التي توفرها المحاسبة. سؤالي حق مستر هانز، هل تعتقد أن هذا القصور يرجع إلى القصور في الأطر الفكرية المحاسبية فيما يتعلق بمفهوم الأصول المولدة داخليا؟ وشكرا.
I think that was for you, Hans.
Yes, it's not completely clear to me to what specific deficiency you were pointing at this moment. What is true is that you're talking about the intellectual framework of our accounting standards. We call that the conceptual framework. We have a conceptual framework. We have revised it recently. We are actually finishing that right at this moment. And I believe that this new conceptual framework will give a better underpinning of most of our standards, and will hopefully also promote greater consistency in the standards in the future. One of the important questions that we address, for example, in the new conceptual framework is one of the most sensitive questions in accounting is, when do you use historical cost accounting? When do you use market-based accounting, fair value accounting? In the past, we did it a little bit on intuition, which is fine, but I believe in this new conceptual framework, we will have a firmer ground under our feet, and we will be better positioned to make better balanced decisions in the future. I hope that answers your question.
السلام عليكم. صالح ثنيان، محاسب قانوني. سؤالي موجه للدكتور عبد الرحمن. بالنسبة لتبني المعايير الدولية والاستعداد والتحول، هل تعتقد أنه ممكن حيكون هناك حيبقى هذا الموضوع عائق أمام توظيف خريجي الجامعات سواء بنين أو بنات؟ وإذا كان توافقني على هذا الرأي أو قد يكون عائق، وش الإجراءات الاستعدادية في هذا الموضوع غير موضوع الدورات؟ شكرا.
شكرا. سؤال قيم وجيد حقيقة. إصرارنا على أن نكون مركز للمملكة، تكون مركز الترجمة، هذا ضروري جدا. عملية إدخال المعايير الدولية داخل الجامعات هذه خطوة مهمة جدا للأمام. لا يعني ذلك وأنا كنت من معارضين المعايير الدولية سنوات لسبب رئيس واضح في ذلك الوقت، وكانت معارضتي وقلتها على ندوات هو الكلام هو المحافظة على الشباب ودخولهم للمهنة. أنا أعتقد الآن في أساليب كثيرة جدا أنها حقيقة، وأنا أعتقد أن بدأت بعض الجامعات الآن في عملية إدخال المعايير الدولية إلى الكوريكولم حقهم، هذا ضروري جدا. أيضا بيكون سقبة بيدخل فيه بدل بعض الترمينولوجي الخاصة بالمعايير الدولية مستقبلا. ليس هناك في الكونسبت اوف ميجرمنت ما في فروقات كبيرة جدا، حتى لو على الأمريكية ولا انترناشونال ولا اليابانيين ولا المعايير السعودية، أشياء بسيطة جدا الفروقات اللي بينهم. العملية صراحة بكل أمانة breaking language، أقولها بكل صراحة. لماذا خريج جامعة الأمير سلطان يتعين قبل ما يتخرج بسنة؟ سؤال بسيط. بينما خريجي بعض الجامعات يقعد 3 سنوات ما تعين. يعني السؤال هو الكريكولم اللي هو التعليم الجامعي. أنا أعترف بقصور يوم كنت في الجامعة أن ما طولنا التطوير الكافي، ليس مني أنا ولكن من عوامل كثيرة جدا. الجامعات الحكومية بيروقراطية لتغيير المنهج ما هي سهلة، بينما في جامعة خاصة تغير المنهج في أسبوع وتجيب الأستاذ بأسرع وقت ممكن. فأعتقد أنه مع التغير اللي يحدث، خاصة يوم ترجمت المعايير للعربية القوية الآن، أعتقد أنها فرصة كبيرة إن شاء الله الشباب أنهم يدخلون. نظل أقول وأكرر وأقول 10 مرات، أقول في سر عدم دخول الشباب السعوديين المهنة في بدايته. أنا ما أدري وش السر هذا، أنا عجزت 30 سنة بحاول أحصل عليه ما لقيت. ما يدخلون المهنة، أما عدم قبول أو يجلس 6 شهور يمشي، أو أنا ما أدري. شباب صغار أنا ما زلت أحسر وأعلم من وحدة شاب طموحة واقفة قدامكم تقول لي 3 سنوات ما قدرت أدخل مكتب محاسبة. إيش الكلام هذا؟ السر فيه يمكن ما يبغون السعوديين، يمكن أنا ما أدري، يمكن مكاتب ما تبغى السعوديين، قد يكون هذا. أنا ما أدعي ذلك، بس ما لقيت والله السبب الرئيسي يعني ما أشوف المكاتب كلها مليانة بالشابات والشباب. عندنا شباب طاقات ما هي موجودة، أرخص وأحسن وقريبين، ولا يبون تذاكر خارج المملكة ولا يبون شيء نبت. وش السبب؟ والله ما أعرف، أعترف وأقر قدامكم أني لا أعرف. شكرا.
Thank you very much. We have a couple of questions over here, so let's take those next.
Hello, I'm Arij Al-Haydari from Riyadh Bank. This question is to Mr. Al-Garni. You mentioned that you are in the final stages of implementation in SABIC. So the question is, can you share with us some of the major challenges you faced for implementation that might assist all of us that are going through this phase at the moment?
Yeah, so if you are asking about in which phase we are in now, we are in the phase 3, which is the final phase. That's from an implementation perspective, as to have our system compliant and ready for go live. But definitely, as the other panelists, maybe they touch base. This is just, you know, part of the journey now. The post go live is more important. And we need to make sure that we have the right capabilities for our run and maintain. At the end of the day, yes, it's IFRS is a big thing now, just to as a convergence project. But at the end of the day, it will be like new principles that we need to adhere to. So we are in very advanced phase to go live. Hopefully that we are also succeeding to run and maintain the IFRSs.
Can I maybe just add into that? I think one of the biggest challenges around any of these conversions, and the focus really has to be on, it's not just about getting an opening balance sheet and an income statement, whatever, for 2017, 2018 as you go. What is important is looking at 2018, 2019, how do you get the sustainability of your reporting in place so that the people can run it as business as usual. And that's probably the bigger element of most of some of the bigger conversions that we do, is how do you get the systems, the processes and the people all aligned so that you can actually report in a consistent quality manner.